My name is Ann Whitfield. I'm 69 years old. I want to talk about something that has been sitting heavy on my kitchen table lately, right next to my morning tea. When Frank died back in October of 2019, I thought I had the math figured out. We had a plan. We had the paid off mortgage on this house. We had my teaching pension from the school district. We had his Social Security. I thought the budget was a solved puzzle that just needed to be maintained. I was wrong. There is a very specific kind of financial surprise that hits you when you are doing this alone. It is not always the massive emergencies like a new roof or a hospital stay. Those happen, but you kind of brace for them. It is the small, quiet, persistent leaks that nobody warns you about in the retirement brochures. I am talking about the new math of being a household of one on a fixed income. Last Tuesday, I opened a bill that made me sit down in Frank's old armchair and stay sat down for a good long while. It was not a mistake. I checked the numbers twice. It was just life getting more expensive in ways I had not budgeted for when we originally made our retirement spreadsheet. And it made me realize that even with a careful plan, I was still being blindsided. You wake up on a Tuesday and realize your car insurance went up specifically because you are no longer receiving a multi-car discount. Or you realize the grocery bill for one person is somehow nearly what it was for two. Everything is packaged and priced for families, and that feels weird. It is not a good weird like a surprise party or finding $20 in an old coat. It is just weird. It is a low-level, humming anxiety that follows you from the mailbox back to the kitchen counter. You start second-guessing the very small things. You wonder if you really need this specific brand of tea. You wonder if you can skip the church luncheon this month to save $15. I am not going to give you a 5-step system to fix your finances. I don't have one. I am just going to tell you what happened to me and what I am figuring out as I go. Because I think we need to be a lot more honest about the actual numbers than we usually are in these conversations. I remember sitting in this exact room about 3 months after Frank's funeral. I had the book open. That's what I call the worn notebook where I keep everything important written down. I was looking at our joint checking account statement. It hit me like a physical weight in my chest. For 40 years, our finances were a team project. Frank did the spreadsheets, I did the talking. He kept track of the decimal points, and I made sure the checks were mailed. We had a system. Suddenly, I was staring at a survivor benefit of $1,890. I was staring at my own pension of $1,240. That totals $3,130 a month. On paper, that is a comfortable life here in Greenville. But looking at that statement, I realized I did not know how to be the sole person in charge of the math. I saw a charge for a subscription Frank had for an engineering journal. He hadn't read it in months. I saw the car insurance premium. I saw the property tax escrow. I realized I was paying for a life built for two people, but I was doing it on a single set of shoulders. That realization was not a neat little lesson. It was just a cold, quiet panic in a very quiet house. It took me a long time to understand that the math had fundamentally changed. The numbers were the same, but the reality behind them was entirely different. So I want to go through a few very specific things I have noticed lately. Things about the money side of widowhood and single retirement that I wish someone had pulled me aside and explained. The first thing that caught me off guard was what I call the single person penalty. It applies to almost everything, starting with utilities and trash pickup. When Frank was here, our water bill was about $45 a month. Now it is $38. You would think it would be half. Logically, one person uses half the water of two people, but the base fees stay exactly the same whether there is one person brushing their teeth or an entire family taking showers. I spent a whole afternoon looking at my utility statements from 2018. I compared them line by line to now. The heating bill for this house does not care that I am only sitting in one room at a time. It costs just as much to keep the pipes from freezing for me as it did for both of us. Frank used to keep the thermostat at 68 in the winter. He would walk around in a thick sweater. I bumped it up to 70 after he died because I was tired of being cold. That costs extra. I felt a bit silly getting upset over a water bill or a heating bill. But when you are on a fixed income, those base fees start to feel like a tax on being alone. That is when I figured out that my fixed expenses were not nearly as flexible as I hoped they would be. They are stubborn. Then there is the matter of home maintenance, when you are the only one holding the screwdriver. Frank was a civil engineer for the county for 35 years. He knew how things were built. He knew how they came apart. If a faucet leaked, it was fixed by Saturday lunch. If the lawn needed mowing, he was out there on the riding mower. Last month, the garbage disposal started making a sound like a small plane taking off. In the past, that cost $0. Frank would get under the sink with a flashlight and fix it. This time, it cost $120 just for a man to come out, look under my sink, and tell me I shouldn't have put lemon peels down the drain. I have had to start a Frank replacement fund in my budget. I put $50 a month into it for all the things he used to do for free. My daughter Jen thinks I should just sell the house. She tells me to move into a condo where they handle the exterior repairs and the landscaping. She is being helpful. She is a problem solver. But every time I pay a repairman, I am not just paying for the fix. I am paying for the fact that the person who knew how this house worked is not here to whisper the instructions to me. I pay $60 a month for a teenager down the street to mow the lawn. I pay someone to clean the gutters twice a year. Frank would have hated paying for that. He would have told me to stay off the roof, but he would have gotten up there himself. Now I pay for the safety of staying on the ground. It is a necessary expense, but it is an entirely new one. The third thing is the social cost of being a widow. And I mean that literally, in dollars and cents. My church group does a lot of outings. We take little trips. When we were a couple, we would split the gas or take turns driving with the Miller family. We would share the cost of a hotel room. Now, if I want to go to the regional botanical gardens, I am paying for the full tank of gas myself. I am paying the full single supplement if I want to go on the seniors' bus trip to Charleston. I looked at a brochure for a mountain retreat last week. The price for a double room was $300. The price for me alone was $280. It is like the world is designed to reward you for having a partner and charge you extra for losing one. I don't fully understand why a single person costs almost as much as a couple to house for a weekend. The hotel still has to clean the room, I suppose, but it makes me hesitate before saying yes to things I used to do without thinking. I noticed I have started staying home more, not because I am sad, just because the single price tag feels like a deterrent. I went out to dinner with my brother Thomas and his wife a few months ago when they visited from Indiana. Thomas tried to pay for the whole thing. I insisted we split it. But splitting a check 3 ways when 2 of those people share a bank account is just an awkward bit of math. It is a small thing, but it is a constant reminder that the financial symmetry is gone. The numbers that really keep me up, though, are the ones involving Medicare and the things it just does not touch. I pay $187 a month for my Medicare supplement. That is fine. I budgeted for that. But then there is the dental work. I had a crown come loose 3 weeks ago while I was eating toast. That was an $800 surprise. Frank would have looked at the bill, grumbled about the cost of aging, and written the check from our joint savings account. We would have absorbed it together. Now I am the one looking at the savings account and seeing that $800 leave. It feels significantly bigger when it is only your name on the account. I called my older sister Patty about it. She has been a widow for 8 years. She is my advanced scout in all of this. Patty calls these unexpected medical bills the survival spikes. She told me you cannot budget for the spikes perfectly. You can only build a cushion high enough to land on them safely. She is usually right, even when I do not want her to be. Patty told me to expect at least one survival spike a year. Last year, it was new eyeglasses. This year, it was the crown. Next year, it might be hearing aids. You just have to leave room in the spreadsheet for the fact that bodies get expensive as they get older. Frank and I had planned for that abstractly. Dealing with it practically alone is a different weight to carry. Then there is the cost of being prepared when you have adult children who worry. My daughter Jen lives in Charlotte. That is 90 minutes away. She is very protective of me. Sometimes it feels a bit like management. Jen is constantly sending me links to medical alert necklaces or smart home systems. She wants me to have what she calls a monitored life. Those systems come with a monthly fee. It is usually $30 or $40 or $50. Then there is the updated cell phone plan she insisted on, so she can track my location when I go for my morning walks. I pay $48 a month for my phone. Jen thinks I should upgrade to a plan with more data for safety features. It all adds up very quickly. I am spending nearly $100 a month just to keep my daughter's anxiety at a manageable level. I love her for caring. I really do. She handled everything when Frank died. She organized the funeral and the paperwork. But I sometimes wonder if I am paying a peace of mind tax that Frank and I never had to consider. We were each other's alarm systems. If I fell in the kitchen, Frank was in the living room. Now, technology has to fill that gap. And technology is never free. I have a subscription for a video doorbell now. It is $4 a month. It is not going to break me, but it is another line item that exists purely because I am alone. I want to talk about the house specifically because it is the absolute biggest variable in my new math. Frank and I paid off the mortgage in 2018. It was entirely his idea to push hard and get it done before he retired. He sat at this very kitchen table and showed me the final statement from the bank. He said, "Carol, no matter what happens, you will always have a roof." I am grateful for that every single month. I never take it for granted. But a paid-off house isn't a free house. I think people forget that. The property taxes and the homeowner's insurance are $310 a month. Then there is the maintenance I already mentioned. Then there are the utilities. Every quarter or so, I sit down with my notebook and ask myself out loud if I should sell. If I moved into a smaller apartment, my utilities would drop significantly. My exterior maintenance would go to zero. But then I would be paying rent. And rent goes up every year. My property taxes stay relatively steady, or at least they only creep up slowly. Jen wants me to move closer to her in North Carolina, but the cost of living in Charlotte is higher than it is here in Greenville. I would be trading a paid-off, appreciating asset for a monthly expense I cannot control. I am still figuring it out. Every time I look at the bookshelf behind me with Frank's engineering manuals and our framed photos, the math of selling gets a lot harder. It is not just a financial calculation. It is an emotional one masquerading as a financial one. I suspect a lot of you know exactly what I mean. I am also learning that the cost of food is entirely different when you are alone. I spend about $280 a month on groceries. Honestly, it feels like too much for one person. It bothers me. But have you tried buying a head of lettuce that doesn't rot before you can finish it yourself? Or a loaf of bread? I have started freezing half the loaf the moment I get home from the store. I have started buying the smaller, much more expensive containers of milk because the gallon always goes sour before I reach the bottom. It is a terrible paradox. You end up paying more per ounce just so you waste less overall. Frank used to eat anything I put in front of him. He had a healthy appetite. We cooked real meals every night. Now I find myself eating a lot of tea and toast dinners. The effort of cooking a full, balanced meal for one person feels like an expensive energy I cannot always afford by 5 o'clock. I am trying to do better with that. My son David called me from Oregon last Sunday. He always calls on Sundays. He asked what I had for dinner. I lied and said chicken. I hate lying to him. He is softer than Jen. He sits in the difficult feelings with me. So the next day, I went out and bought the ingredients for Frank's chili. I am trying to make it, but it is hard to scale it down for just me. The spices are never quite right when you cut the recipe in thirds. Buying small quantities of fresh ingredients is expensive. Eating out is expensive. Food is just harder now. Then there is clothing and personal care. I do not spend much, maybe $220 a month on miscellaneous personal items and household goods. But I have noticed I make entirely different choices now. I almost never buy black clothes anymore. I made that choice consciously after the first year. I spent a year wearing dark, heavy colors. I did not want to look like I was still in the middle of that first dark October. I buy dusty rose now. I buy soft blue. I buy sage green. I want to look like someone who is still present in the world, not someone fading out of it. And that costs a little bit too. The effort of getting dressed for the day, the small gold stud earrings I wear every morning, getting my hair cut regularly. It is a small investment in my own morale. Frank used to tell me the silver in my hair suited me better than the brown ever did. He would have had an opinion about the pink sweaters I buy now. He probably would have said they were cheerful. Spending money on myself feels different now that there is no one else earning it with me. I have to give myself permission to buy a new cardigan. That sounds ridiculous for a nearly 70-year-old woman to say, but it is true. The accountability shifted entirely inward. I am not saying all of this to be bleak. I want to be very clear about that. I am actually doing okay. Some days are better than others, but mostly I am okay. I have about $1,686 left over every month after the absolute basics are paid. I put $800 of that straight into savings. I keep the rest as spending money. I consider this more than enough. I am intensely aware that I am luckier than many widows my age. The okayness requires a level of vigilance I did not expect to have at this age. I thought retirement was when you finally stopped watching the clock and the bank account so closely. It turns out, when the we becomes I, you have to watch both even closer. Not out of fear. I am not afraid. I watch it out of respect for the life I am still building. I want to be completely honest about the survivor benefits, because that is the part that confused me the most when I was doing the paperwork. When Frank died, I had to choose between claiming my own Social Security benefit or claiming his. Since he was the higher earner by a fair margin, I took his. That $1,890 is an absolute lifeline. But the moment he died, his own check stopped coming. We went from 2 Social Security checks hitting the bank account to 1. The house expenses stayed exactly the same, but the income dropped. That is the cliff that nobody explains to you until you are standing right on the edge of it looking down. I am incredibly lucky because I have my teacher's pension from the Vigo County School Corporation. Without that $1,240, the math simply would not work. I would have to sell the house tomorrow. I would be one of those widows you see working the register at the craft store. Not because they want a fun part-time job, but because they have to pay for their property taxes. I am aware of that grace every single day I sit here. I am looking at my notebook now. I track everything in the exact same spreadsheet format Frank built. I updated the header to say Carol's numbers at the top. I kept everything else exactly the way he designed it. It makes me feel like he is still helping me do the math. When I sit down to pay the bills, I straighten my posture a bit. My old curriculum coordinator instincts kick in. I want the numbers to be precise, because precision is the only way I can predict the future now. When we planned this retirement, we planned it together. We had a list of national parks we were going to see. The list is still tucked into the back of my notebook. Frank went first. He retired exactly 6 months before he died. He had 6 good months of morning walks and cooking dinner. I was going to follow him into retirement a year later. When he died, I went back to work. I needed somewhere to be. I needed a reason to get dressed. But eventually, I took the retirement date from his original spreadsheet, and I kept it. It felt like keeping a promise to him, even though the promise was originally to us. Now I am doing the planning alone. The math is the same. Addition is still addition. Everything else is different. Everything has a different weight to it. I want to know if you have run into this. If you are living on a single income after years or decades of being part of a pair, what was the one bill that actually made you stop and get angry? Was it the car insurance? Was it the single supplement price for a trip? Or was it something small, like the price of a small carton of milk? Leave a comment down below and tell me. Let's talk about it. I read them. It helps me feel a little less like I am the only one doing this new math in a quiet house. I am thinking about taking a trip next spring. One of the national parks on Frank's old list. Maybe Zion. I have been looking at the numbers. It is expensive to go alone. The flights, the lodging, all of it falls on one budget line. But then I think about the notebook. I think about the promises we made. I think I can make the math work if I start saving that extra bit of spending money right now. It means saying no to a few local things. It means being a bit tighter on the grocery budget. But I think it is worth it. It is about building what is mine now. It just took me a long time to understand that I was allowed to build something new. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to say today. The tea is getting cold anyway. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it.